Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, Chair of Property Investment Professionals of Australia, and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch, where each week Ben and I give you the insider's guide to property investing. Hello, mate.
G'day, buddy. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Footy's almost.
I was about to say, our listeners would be getting nervous, wouldn't they?
Oh, now that we can talk shop. Real shop.
I know. Mate, you wrote the cover story for the Money magazine that is currently in the stands. And
today. Goes on sale today. And
I've read it, and I obviously have to say, despite the fact he's a Collingwood supporter, despite the fact he doesn't like cricket, he actually is a good bloke and he knows what he's talking about. So that's irritating to acknowledge, I've got to say.
So even though I might have my head on the story for the listeners, big shout out to a couple of the team members who helped. Obviously, Bryce helped put it together, but we also have Michael Pope, who's one of the geniuses inside our business, who helps with some of the sophisticated modelling work that I do. He checks all my work. So from that point of view, Michael, you're a genius. So thank you very much.
Rent vesting is what that's all about.
Yeah.
And Ben's also shot a video that accompanies that. So if you go to your local news agent and pick up a copy. We've also, in the current edition, if people want to actually subscribe to Money, they can actually get our book. So if you don't have our book and you love the Money magazine, there's 2-for-1 offer there. Go and subscribe to the Money magazine and you will get a copy of the book, which is pretty cool.
And the listeners are probably saying, when we're going to talk about reinvesting? Well, probably in a couple of weeks' time. Once the magazine's out, we've got to do the right thing by the team there. It's the number one publication for investing and finance. So yeah, we'll let them have the opportunity to push the magazine forward because we love it.
Yep.
We love Effie. So from that point of view, but we will, I promise you, run a series on rent vesting and a conversation. Actually, we have got Chris Gray coming on.
We do, coming up.
Yeah, in the next month or two. So, we might talk about that because that's sort of right down his alley. So it should be a good conversation to be had.
He's maybe the number one profiled rent investor in the country.
Yeah, I reckon that's a great
So we'll have a chat
point
to him about that. I also had a nice win this week. I got to speak with Alan Kohler. I was invited in to talk on Qantas Radio, talking business with Alan Kohler.
Yep, in flight.
I've listened to many of those, even back in the Peter Switzer days, flying on a Qantas plane. So we've now taken the book international, Ben, because it'll go on international flights.
International. We're international, mate. And better yet, that your show's also Location Australia is also showing on the in-flight at the moment. So you're everywhere, mate. You are everywhere.
Mate, we're getting a good run, which is really, really nice. Hey, I just, through the week, we got this testimonial, and this sounds a little self-serving, but I wanted to read it out and let the listeners know this testimonial is the reason why we started the podcast. Hi, this is from Dean. Hi, Bryce and Ben. Just wanted to say I've been listening to your podcast for some time now, and you guys have increased my knowledge of property exponentially. Thanks to you guys, I'm 26 and own 2 properties, and I'm in the process of purchasing my third. All have owner-occupier appeal and supply decent yield and are striving for decent capital growth. Just wanted to say I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your wealth of knowledge. I bought a few copies of your book to hand out to friends that I think could use the helping hand. Ben, very first episode, if someone's hearing this one for the first time today, if they rewind back to episode 1, you said, quote, I'm sick of people making dumb decisions.
Did I?
And mate, that there from Dean helps you get some sense of satisfaction that people, if they apply the frameworks, the process, and the philosophies that we're talking about, they won't make dumb decisions anymore.
They won't. That's the why for us. So thank you very much for reaching out. That's makes it all worthwhile.
It does.
If anyone else has other great stories like that, let us know, because it is exactly why we do it. We're really passionate about it in terms of helping others build knowledge. It's a high value transaction. We don't want to see households doing it the wrong way and losing their momentum onto financial independence.
That's right. So thanks, Dean. If anyone else is out there and they've done the same thing, they've applied some principles and some philosophies that we've talked about, helping them buy an investment property, we would love to hear from you. Yeah. In fact, we'd love to see a link of the property that you bought. So that we can maybe critique it online as well, on the podcast as well. But if that's you and you want to share that, we'd love to hear from you.
What are we talking about today?
Mate, we're talking about something that you are very, very passionate about. When I first met you, this was one of the things that you said, look after the pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves, or words to that effect.
Yep.
And so today we want to talk about money smarts, and we have touched on it in previous podcasts,
Yep.
but we actually want to unpack it a little bit today.
Yeah, I thought it's really important. Wealth creation starts with effective money management. So we're going to spend some time on this today, and the acronym of what is SMARTS, in terms of trying to get people to understand it and apply it. So let's get into it.
I heard of an anecdote during the week of someone who said that the principle of money management was if I've got money in the bank, it's there to spend. And the question was, well, have you paid your rates yet? No, the bill hasn't come in. Have you paid your rent yet? No, it's not due yet. But you're spending your money and you've got these obligations coming up. And so people can easily get on a cycle. We've had lots of people write into us saying that they're on the credit card trap, the cycle of never-ending chasing debt. And so the principles that we're talking about through Money Smarts allow people to get some peace and some satisfaction around basic money management under their roof so that they can trap surplus and put the surplus into their favourite asset class, and clearly for us it's residential real estate.
Yeah, look, if I can add to that, we also have some, sort of really high-end households who come in, high-income earners who come in, combined household incomes, 250 plus, and they're like struggling. Where does it go?
Yeah.
And so, and I've also had conversations about, with other people where they're sort of saying, if you give me a commitment, I will pay it. But if you don't give me that commitment, in other words, get me a debt and I will pay it off because I'm good at that. But if I've got this surplus cash, as you were just saying before, I will find an excuse or a justification for some retail therapy or whatever it may be and go out and spend it. So it's almost for some people, it's like, get me an investment property because I know that I can, because I will allocate it. But if you don't do that, I'm going to be lazy with my money. So that's really what we're here to talk about and sort of give some of our listeners and the people who've read the book some further context to the whole concept.
Page 58 in the book is where the Money Smart system is. We're going to talk about it and then we're going to give a very special bonus at the end of the podcast. So stick around for that. We'll let you know exactly what that is. But that bonus will help people know which account they should use for which expenses.
It's basically a cheat sheet. It's a guide sheet, so a reference tool to go back to and say, okay, I've got this expense happening. How does it work? Now, to do that, we obviously need to try and explain to the listener, because they're sitting in their car or wherever, going for a run, working out at the gym. So we need to show in visual context what the structure is. So the best way to look at this is to go back to what our grandparents used to do. Okay, they used to have flour jars. So the old sort of flour tins, and they used to have them hidden or whatever, and then Pop would come home and the money would be allocated into the different flour tins. And so the concept isn't really different to that, but what's actually happening is you're arriving at home and he's allocating some for the mortgage, he's allocating some for the groceries, and then he's got his savings pot. Now, with the advent of technology, we're in a different position now where we can move money through different accounts on our smartphones now. So I just want you to visualize this. What we have is usually a primary account. Now, that primary account is the offset account if you have a mortgage. So if you don't have an offset and you've got a basic mortgage, do yourself a favour, get out there like Molly would say, and set up an offset account. Get the right type of loan account. Now, an offset account obviously saves interest every night on the money that you've got against your debt. So that's our primary account. Now, when you do your budget, you know exactly what you want to spend. And so as part of that, we can then quickly work out each week. So you've got groceries, you've got provisions for, sort of internal household goods, whatever it may be. We can work out a number because it's basically your budget. So you work out the number in terms of what you spend on a weekly basis, and we say, okay, that's what you're now going to get paid. So that money is going to go into what we call a lifestyle account. Now that lifestyle account is effectively, and how Jane, my wife, and I use it, is every Thursday. So today's payday for us. We have, and Bryce does the same. We all follow our own systems. Is that money's going to go into that account. So right now we're rich from a cash flow point of view, but here's the deal. That money is to last right through to the following Thursday to allow you to trap that surplus spending, to make sure that you're not doing too much of that lazy or discretionary spending. So if you think about it, and this is what I tell all my clients, that come Monday or Tuesday, if you've got $50 left out of that allocation, because i.e. we've bought the groceries, we've spent the weekend where we've taken the kids to the pool or the movies or whatever it may be, and we've got a provision in the budget for that. But if we've only got $50 left, that's when usually most households, I'll just quickly go down the shop, I'll get the credit card out and we'll go and do a shop. This is about
that's the thief for most households, what
correct.
You just said there.
Yeah, it is, and I'll get you to talk more about that. So I'll just finish off by saying that you then open up the pantry and you make that $50 last. That's the trick, because when we get into a lazy routine and we've got plenty of money, we just keep spending it. So, and there's no checks and balances. This gives you that challenge to make sure the household maintains that and stretches that money as far as it can go. And you finally do get to the back of the pantry and find some soup tins or whatever it is you've got there, and you do it, So I think that's a really important part of it.
It's a 7-day cycle. It's easy to manage. It means because you said before about the offset account, interest is calculated daily, paid monthly. So I always think the more money that can be sitting in an offset account means the more daily that calculation is being done on a lower balance. So then the interest amount that comes out at the end of the month is less.
Correct.
Therefore, I get more money in my offset account. So the way to think of it is you get paid twice. So you get paid once by your source of income, usually your employer.
Yep.
But that's not what you spend, because you've then got to pay yourself. It's a derivative of that.
Absolutely.
A second time.
Pay yourself first. Yep.
So you've got to work out what that is. So Ben said if it's $500 a week, if it's $1,000 a week, whatever it is for you, paid on a Thursday, so that you then turn that into that 7-day cycle.
And then you have the credit card. Now everyone's like, well, credit card? Wait, this is not what Pop used to have. There was no such thing as credit cards back then. But we use credit cards with the discipline of a ninja, in terms of we're trying to make sure that... Did you like that?
I did like that, mate.
I just got this look. Everyone is like, we stand up and talk and have a chat.
Straight I'm thinking no income, no job, no assets. That's what I think back in the GFC.
Yeah, not that type of ninja.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is be in a situation where the banks give us these credit cards that have up to 55 days interest free. So if we're using their money and we ensure that we never pay interest because we auto sweep and make the payments, so we never incur the interest bill. So in most cases, we get 28 days of a rolling balance of whatever's in that account. And it could be, it could build up to $1,200, $1,500. That is money that's sitting in our offset. So the banks are actually help paying off our loan, and we never pay interest on it. So from that point of view, it's a no-brainer. So it doesn't really matter what the credit card interest is if you're disciplined, because you'll never pay interest on that card. And most banks, the good ones, have an auto sweep. So you never even have to, because, there's nothing more frustrating than, I missed the date and there's the interest, there was $52 of interest charge. Oh, damn it. So if you've got it all set up in terms of your lending institution and it auto sweeps, you don't even have to worry about it.
So tell the listeners how they do that, Ben. So how they contact because it doesn't happen, you can't do it automatically, you've got to reach out to the bank.
Yeah, different banks have different processes. So some you have to sign a form and send that in. The good ones, it's all done online. So it's a tick. So you go onto internet banking and you just basically tick apply and you set it up so it automatically does that. So that's the most important thing. Because some also go, but I've got my points and my reward systems. Trust me, if you actually work out what it costs for those reward points compared to paying down your mortgage or investing in property, you would be kidding yourselves to think that they're any value at all. So from that point of view, we say to them, try and combine them into the institution that you're at, because it's very hard to do it with a third-party institution. And if you're doing it with a third-party institution, you can set a direct debit up. But if you get that amount wrong and you're actually transferring more, so some people go, well, I'll just transfer more. Well, guess what? That's money not sitting in your offset. So you're losing that money because you're going to have to bring it back. And of course, one thing you never, ever do on a credit card is do a cash advance. A cash withdrawal from a credit card is very high in fees and it's charged daily. So it's different to the credit that we borrow from the banks on that interest-free arrangement. So think about it simply. We have a credit card, a true credit card, which is where we put all of our fixed costs on. So they're things that we know are absolute fixed costs. And again, we've got the cheat sheet that you can download from the website. And then you've got the living and lifestyle account, which you'll have a Visa debit card for. or a MasterCard debit card. So you've got the credit card, the debit card, and that's all linking into the offset account, so which is the primary account. And then the illustrations are all there in the fact sheet that we're sending through, but that's how it works.
On the point you said about reward points, it's important to understand what's going on with reward schemes, because what the people are doing is, sure, they're giving you, some value, but they want to know what your spending habits are. They've got a database that says, okay, he or she continues to buy this regularly, therefore we'll tailor offers specifically for them. So it's actually counterproductive for your money smart system, because I want to get all my points, but they know how to better market to you, find your soft points, and get more of your money.
Overspend. There's that overspend. So that's the structure. Let's get into the acronym and let's talk through that, because that's going to flesh out all of the principles around why it's important to be basically a great money manager. So the first one we're going to start with is the S for the SMARTS, which is surplus. If you've been listening to this podcast long, you'll know that you cannot create wealth without surplus cash flow.
No.
You simply can't do it. I mean, you cannot create wealth without spending money. And in this case, we're spending on money on hopefully assets that are appreciating in value. So the surplus concept is we've got to get our house in order, we've got to get the family budget in order, and we've got to make sure that we're getting through that comfortably. So really that's an easy one to start with, because we've talked about it a lot before.
That's a big one for us, Ben. There are some people in the marketplace who propose a paradigm where you just service debt with debt.
Yeah.
And I think that's dangerous, because you may have the asset resources to service the debt, but if your money management is poor, it's like the guys that predicted the GFC.
Well, it was the GFC. Money was cheap, and people were using this paradigm shift in equity. It wasn't true.
People are going to take a long walk off a short plank eventually.
Correct.
Because they'll run out. So, surplus is ultimately everything that we talk about with money smarts is to trap surplus. So that's the S in SMARTS. M is mindset, and I think that's largely, money is a commodity like anything else, but people have a whole bunch of emotion attached to it, largely from what we see from our parents and our parents' parents. So we have conditioning spoken over us by our parents, and we generally have to most people do one of two things. They continue on with that conditioning, or they have to break out of it. But generally speaking, the old don't, pay cash for everything, don't get into debt. Even your article on rent vesting, why would you even consider that?
Yeah, that'll change. Yeah. Oh man, I'm having churning in my stomachs.
Because financially it just absolutely makes sense, rent vesting, but it doesn't take into account the emotional component of touching your own four walls. But mindset is a big one, and for me, I've talked in a previous podcast that I think that the plane uses most of its fuel taking off, and then leveling off it doesn't use as much. I think the mindset is where most people use most of their emotional fuel, and because they're spending so much time getting from will I, won't I, to I have, they've used up so much of their reserve, the actual assets, I think the asset selection suffers, and we've talked about that a lot. So getting mindset right, making sure that they're in control of money rather than money controlling them is huge.
You just nailed what I was about to say, and that is the trick to money management is controlling money as opposed to it playing with your mind and your decision making. You've heard me talk about the state of wallet playing with the state of mind. Well, that's exactly what it is. And Bryce, once people do realise it is simply a commodity, and you can source it fairly easily if you're determined and you work hard, then that's great. So we've got the surplus idea, which is okay. Well, I need to have money left over to invest, and I'm sort of thinking, okay, mindset. In terms of, if I get, this is what I need to understand. I need to, not procrastinate. I need to think about what I'm doing, and I need to be in the right frame of mind for the medium to long-term outcomes that I'm trying to achieve. What's next?
Well, I was just going to say on the mindset, I think that, a lot of people around mindset think I don't earn enough to do it.
Yeah.
And to talk on one of the points you mentioned before, I've had doctors on 800,000 who don't know where their money goes, which is what your point earlier.
Yep.
Whereas if someone who's on, average income, somewhere between 70 and 90,000, they know exactly where all of their money goes. They're often better money managers, and they're often, through their circumstance, they're more determined. It's like, when you have immigration in this country, they see us as opportunity, and quite often they're the people that just get on with it because they see the opportunity, whereas some people who can take it for granted, which is what happens with people on big incomes.
Yep, so we get our headspace right, and then what's the next part? Well, the application, the process. And I'm fortunate that I get to see all different types of households, as you do, and we're sitting there. We don't start an investment plan without actually having a thorough understanding of how people manage money. So I've got extreme cases. I mean, I've got cases like you were just mentioning before, where does it all go? And then I've got other people who I'm in awe of. We've got a husband and wife outfit that we know to run their whole household. Their full expenditure is $17,000 a year. That's everything. And if they want to, they've said that they can tweak it so it gets down to $11,000. Now, that blows my mind because I know what I spend in my household. Yeah. But they've got an incredible story, and one day, we hope to, interview them at a later date. And I've also, and the other one that jumps in mind, I remember, this is probably about 2 years ago, raised 5 kids, had paid off their home, and had $200,000 in the bank, and they were living in suburban Melbourne. And I'm like, all right, tell me how you did that. Yeah. Tell me how you... And so in her case, she bought a lot of the raw material. So, the baking, the breads, she just did it all. So, one wage. And I was just like, come on, was there inheritance? So I spent an hour trying to learn from them. So don't say it can't be done, because that's not true. And the application part of that is sort of saying, all right, I realise that I've got to apply what I'm being taught, what I'm learning around being good at what it is.
Yeah, that's knowledge and wisdom, isn't it?
Yep.
Loads of people got knowledge, but can they turn it into wisdom? And that's the key.
Oh, there's a bit of gold there for you.
So SMARTS, SMA, R for resources. This is really in 2 parts: human resources and technology resources.
Correct.
So human resources is all about what we're talking about. Surround yourself with a team of people that you trust. They're on the same page, same agenda, moving in the same direction. Buyers, agents, solicitors, investment savvy mortgage broker, qualified property investment advisor,
accountants, etc.
But the technology, you touched on the technology before in terms of even just having that automatic sweep of your credit card, so that you can maximise the amount of money that's working in your favour in your offset account versus your credit card doing the heavy lifting for 55 days, and then using technology to automatically sweep that at the end of the month to make sure that you're not paying any extra cents, any extra money in interest.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, it's like the reason why we built this is it shouldn't take a lot of time to actually manage. It should be a situation where if you're tracking to the weekly allowance that you've given yourself, then you shouldn't be checking everything. You don't have to check anything else. And as long as the credit card, the costs you're putting on the credit card, because we don't put any discretionary spend on the credit card. It's got to be very disciplined spend, and we again outline all of that in the cheat sheet that we're going to send you, or you can download once you subscribe. So that's a really important point. So for me, it's like, early on in our business, we actually helped households manage money, and a lot of households were like, great, they really worked it, but almost 50% of the households, it was like, oh, this is a bit hard, I'm getting judged, I'm being held accountable. And so we're sort of saying this program, this solution, this process should be simple to run, and we think it is.
Very good. And a little sneak preview there, because there's PocketSmith, there's Pocketbook, there's a number of apps.
Yeah, there's a few apps out there.
But you've also got one that in the early stages, we can't talk too much at this stage, but you're passionate about providing some technology for money management too.
Well, I think one of the teachings we've had and the lessons we've learned from the people that we've, the thousands of people that I've sat in front of, is that a lot of people still don't know where it goes. So they go, well, where does it all go? So we're trying to build something that will show them the granular level so they can have a look at the top line, but if they're running, say, transport costs, they can go car, and then they can go down to maintenance, and they go down to fuel, so they can really see where it all goes, because that is usually the big debate, and unfortunately in some houses it causes a lot of discussion. So who's spending all this money? Well, once it's all traced and tracked and kept in train, you can actually see it. And so this is about sort of we're building client portal. That's what it will be, a wealth portal, and that will allow clients to log into a location, and they can have a look at all of that, and they can tag it down to the granular, but they can also see the top line as well. So we're really excited about that, because again, we feel that most Australians, if they get that bit right, and then they have a sensible go at investing, will at least be better off. I mean, one of the big reasons we set up our company was all around changing people's lives, and that is a big part of it.
It is a big part of it. So that's SMAR. We've got T.
T stands for timelines. So from a timelines point of view, we've got time. That's the finite resource. So when are we getting started? Okay, so again, it focuses on things like procrastination, and then sort of saying, is this it? But also how long, once you start extrapolating your cash flows out, you can actually see, the sort of level of potential you have. And so when we're talking about timelines...
It's kind of that reverse engineering process, isn't it? So I remember the very first process that I was involved in property. It was back in 1998. I was with a group of people that were talking about investing. The timeline was 7 properties in 7 years. And the process was by property number 1 and by in year 1, property number 2, year 2 and so on. So by year 8, property number 1, if it had the 7-year doubling cycle, would have doubled in value. You go back to the bank and you leverage against that to fund your lifestyle. And then year 9, property 2 would have doubled and so on. But my strategy has actually evolved to... I've also been part of the process where using equity to service your lifestyle and service debt, and to now arrive where we currently comfortably sit in that conservative space. And so the first thing we always, and conservative space of creating a passive income through debt retirement.
Now there might be a little short period of time where we might be using a little bit of buffer.
Yeah, of course.
There's nothing worse than selling a property thinking we're about to have a family when they could have actually traded through that period because they were only going backwards $10,000 over that time. So that, we'll talk about that another day, but that's a really important one.
Absolutely. But ultimately, now the question for each person we speak to is the conversation is always leading to one point. Why? Why bother? Why are you doing this? What's your big picture? And most people actually, I've got to say, you see it more than me in your role, they don't actually know what that why is, other than I want to be rich, I want to have choice, all that sort of stuff. But to say, our book is 2,000 a week, for some people it's 1,000 a week, for some people it's 3,000. Just to put the line in the sand, to know your colours to the mast and say that's what I'm shooting for, it's a beautiful spot, because for timelines we go, okay, based on the fact that you want 2,000 a week and we've got 23 years left until traditional retirement, or we've got 13 years left, let's reverse engineer on the timeline what we need to do and when.
Exactly, and that's plan to become what you plan to become, and so timelines. Set our goals. So come back to your mindset. Okay, my mindset's right. These are the personal goals, the financial goals that we're trying to achieve. They've got to obviously be realistic, but that's where again you talk about the resources. So you're bringing in that trusted advisor who's going to help you set some of those tasks and outcomes, and that's where we get it to, and which is the perfect segue, which closes it all up is. The S.
S for strategy, and that's the overarching context. And I always say to a client, or anyone who wants to talk about property, you've got to get 3 things right in this order. Strategy first, investment grade suburb second, investment grade property third. And the amount of times that people do it the other way around, start with property, hope they get the suburb right, and then have some vague at best strategy is unbelievable. So we've left it to last, but it forms the cornerstone of everything we do.
It's the circular reference. It brings it all back in. So, we're unpacking all of the content inside that, but that is it. That you put all those things together and you mesh it together beautifully, and you've got a very strong fabric in which you can take it forward.
Agreed, mate. So I've got to give credit where credit's due. You came up with that acronym many, many moons ago, and it's part of the book, page 58 of our book. So the Money Smart stands for S for surplus, M for mindset, A for application, R for resources, T for timelines, and S for strategy. And as part of that, the actual structure of lending really starts with the heartbeat of your whole management system revolves around having an offset account and 2 cards. Credit card for all of the non-discretionary items like your phone bill and your fuel and your rates and all those sorts of things.
All those fixed costs.
And then a debit card, which is because sometimes the question is why do you need a debit card? Because sometimes I want to go and see Carl Barron at the moment, so I've got to pay for it somehow. So I put it on the debit card, and sometimes I can only use a Visa to do that. But at least I'm spending my own money, and then all of your loan accounts form the fourth element.
Correct, and we don't want Christmas accounts and all that, because effectively what we've done is we've said the traditional transaction account, which is the offset, is now sitting there lying idle. And that's where it should be. So don't go and put money into term deposits or into these sort of Christmas funds, because you're not earning what you would be earning having the money in an offset account, because that offset account is saving interest. So it's technically like tax-free money. You know, you're doing a really good job of doing so that this becomes this. You just want to watch that grow. That's the exciting part. So that's sort of like filling the buckets we talked about before. We've got a loan and we're filling the bucket next to that. So that's beautiful. So if you can get that and you don't put money in other accounts because you can't trust yourself, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And look, emergencies do happen. And if you know that emergency is going to happen, well, you do have that money available to you. But an emergency is not a broken stiletto shoe, or for the men, I'm not just living with it, but for the men, a new driver because you can't hit the one you currently own, in terms of golfing driver, that is. So that's not an emergency. You know, that's something to save up for as part of, you know, the presents and gifts.
But mate, we've been in 23 years of economic prosperity, mate. We can't remember a recession. Don't you just buy your driver whenever you want to?
Oh, well, that's the problem. I mean, interestingly enough, the GDP numbers came out yesterday. Yeah. Surprised on the upside. We're now tracking at 3% GDP, which is what a lot of people didn't think. You know, that's the best in something like 7 years. But what's also interesting is it's all being led by the consumer. So the consumer's feeling pretty happy, pretty comfortable, and they're getting out and spending. So our net savings ratio, which peaked at around 12% back just after the GFC when we were all sort of going to our shelves, is now down to 7%. So that's quite interesting to sort of say. So we as Australians are spending our way there, but just remember, if we all keep doing that, we're not going to be having a nest egg in retirement. So for those who are dedicated and listening to our podcast, you're going to be the exception to the rule. You're going to be in that top 5% of people who are going to have a pretty comfortable, if not very exciting, retirement.
That is exciting. And the front page of The Age on Tuesday was real estate is contributing more than the mining sector. So note to the leader of the opposition
and potentially the actual current government, do not touch negative gearing.
Exactly. So there you have it, folks. We thought it might be interesting to unpack we've hinted about elements of Money Smarts in previous podcasts, but we've talked about the fact that we're going to do a whole session on it for some time, which we have. So there you go. You've got the structure, you've got the acronym, and if you've made it this far in the podcast, if you go to thepropertycouch.com.au, we will have that cheat sheet up for you. Where you can, you know, if this stuff is actually resonating with you and you want to implement it, we'll actually show you which category of expense and which account it should come from.
And that's in the book, we actually don't do the cheat sheet. So we're going to put that reference up, and that also helps the people who have bought the book as well. So if you've read the book and you know, understand the Money Smarts, but you're looking for the cheat sheet in terms of the instruction sheet on how to operate your accounts, we're going to have that there for you as well.
Yeah, very, very good bonus. So there you have it, folks. And I also want to let you know that the Reserve Bank left interest rates on hold this week. So if you're interested in hearing, Ben does a commentary each and every month. So if you're interested in seeing that, we'll put that up on the Property Couch. Or if you just want to get that automatically, go to our website at empowerwealth.com.au. Down the very bottom of the page, you can subscribe to our newsletter and you'll get it as a no-brainer. So we'll put that up for you also. Ben not only talks about the interest rate decision, but he gives you an economist's view of all of the elements that are at play, and I find that very, very helpful for a lot of. I always watch it. A lot of our clients watch it also. The other thing is our team here is expanding. I'm looking for someone who wants to work with me. It's a Melbourne-based role, Ben.
Directly under you.
Directly with me. I really enjoy helping clients. You can. Mate, you can.
Well, this is my official.
Do you reckon we'd box on? We've both got pretty strong views. So if you're
interestingly, they're strong views, but they're normally united views.
They are united on strategy. On strategy, maybe tactics. Different on a few tactics. No, that's true. We are very much on the same page. So if that's you, it's a Melbourne-based role. If you love looking at property, if you love buying tailored investment-grade properties, and you want to help Australians do that, just send us a note. Send Ivis an email, info@thepropertycouch.com.au. If it's you, if it's someone you know, let us know. We'd love to chat to them. And ideally, that person would probably have been in real estate sales before and didn't like that side of the industry. but has the exposure and wants to be on the buyer's side, definitely come and have a chat.
And you're getting mentored by one of Australia's best buyers agents, so I mean it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, I'd love to chat to you if that's you. So that'd be great. And as we say every week, Ben, if you love our podcast, do you know what we haven't done?
What's that?
Today is actually our 1 year anniversary, because last week was episode 52, which is the last in a year. This week is episode 53.
Oh,
so it's the beginning of a new year.
Can you believe birthday to us?
Can you believe?
Happy birthday.
What a talent! This guy can write articles and sing. It's just
Can't
brilliant.
sing it all.
But mate, it's been a year since we sat down in our old office before we moved to this office. And said, should we just get out there and see if we can have a bit of a chat about some of the things we're passionate about? So a big thank you to all of our listeners, because we're approaching 200,000 downloads, which is just extraordinary in 53 episodes. So we are very, very thankful. So if you, as a birthday gift to us, if you've enjoyed this podcast,
I love that segue.
I always think, can you tell one person, but as a birthday gift, can you please tell two?
Two, and a review would be nice as well.
A birthday review would be nice.
Birthday review. Happy birthday, yeah. We'll be looking out for those on the iTunes.
On iTunes.
Yeah,
so
happy birthday.
Info at thepropertycouch.com. If you want to send us a birthday message, we would love to hear from you. But Ben, we made it to 1. Who thought?
Who would have thought? They said we'd never make it. What's that 4X ad?
I know, you're about to go into song again, aren't you? So there you go, folks. You'll find out first about all of our stuff on the Property Couch via social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Ben and I are also on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram if you want to come and find us as well. So as we do every week, Ben, we get to this point where you've just been up all night preparing. Can you please pass him the sheet?
I picked up the piece of it. Now, I don't know whether I've done this one before, but I'm going to give it a go. It's Maldivian. So from the Maldives. Have I done the Maldives?
Is that aspirational? I can just imagine being there.
Oh, yeah,
so, there we go. Yeah. Let's get in character.
Ready?
Yep.
And I don't know how their accent goes. So
Mate, it'll be French talking to a 3-year-old. We know it's every week.
Darnay. They're French, aren't they? French?
Yeah.
Is it Darnay?
Darnay.
Darnay.
Or as I like to say, I like to give an Australian colloquialism. It's Daney.
Daney.
So, but yours sounds better. So until next week, folks.
Darnay.
Darnay. See you guys.
See you.